Welcome everybody to today's webinar. I'm going to give it a few more minutes for everyone to join on. As you might notice, just from a administrative perspective, I have everyone on mute so there's no background noise. There is a questions box in your webinar panel on the right there where you can type in questions and we can start to have a nice dialogue and back and forth. Again, today's topic is getting started with Onshape, mainly through our Learning Center. So what we're going to do is cover a lot of that in terms of what we've added, what we've changed recently, and just where to find useful resources. So if you have questions on anything as we go along, just use that question box to start typing in anything you might want to have. And excellent. So it's the top of the hour. For everyone that's joined us, thank you. Again, just feel free to use that question box to type in any questions. I am monitoring it on my screen here, so I'll be able to see that. Today's August 9th, and the topic of today's webinar is getting started with Onshape's Learning Center. Some of you may know Onshape is a pretty unique CAD system in that it is browser-based. So right now I'm running on a MacBook Pro. I'm in the Firefox or Chrome browser today. And with that comes a lot of, different workflows, perspectives from what you might be used to in addition, other CAD systems. We are 3D parametric modeler, just like SolidWorks, Inventor, things of that nature. But since we're not file-based, we do have some unique differences. And of course, since we are a different CAD company, we also have some unique and different approaches to different concepts, like maybe assemblies, configurations, just the interface will be different. So I want to go over how you can get help, the main tools and resources you can take advantage of to really get started in the system, and how we're providing an edge up for users to really get that help and assistance very quickly to hit the ground running. So before we get into the Learning Center, I do want to cover Onshape support and help. For me personally, this is really important. I come from the SolidWorks Inventor, CAD systems in the past, and I really appreciate how Onshape handles their support and help. It's actually built right into the product, and you talk directly to the team so you can get real-time feedback in the environment. So I actually switch over to my Onshape account really quick, and we say, look at this question mark icon in the top right of my screen. We actually have the ability to come in here and ask for help immediately from the Onshape support team. This brings up this dialog box. I can choose to grab a quick screenshot of my existing screen here and highlight a certain aspect, even inside an Onshape document, the CAD environment of the system. I can choose to share that directly with the support team as well. And this just creates a ticket in our support ticketing system, and you'll start to have a conversation right away. We're one of the highest rated support systems for the CAD industry, which is really exciting to see, and we're very proud of that. Our response time is extremely quick. Usually it's a one-day turnaround for most things. And of course, we do push updates every 3 weeks. So, your feedback, any questions, anything you want to provide to us tends to get put in and taken into account very quickly within our product. Now, let me just close this out. Going into a little bit further depth of our support and help environments, a lot of what you're going to look for does come with this question mark icon. This top bar in Onshape does follow you through as you go into documents, as you go through to other sections of the environment. But this is really where you're going to find most of your help, support, information, and other links to other aspects. I think the biggest one is our built-in help index. This is really the overall main large manual to Onshape. You'll find our desktop and mobile help index listed here. So for those mobile users trying to figure out the different touch gestures to use for each of the features, you also see here. And we started to break down the concept based on certain aspects of Onshape, including enterprise, modeling, release management, so those main topics. I really enjoy and always recommend all users start with this under the things to know and getting started. This really helps explain the philosophy to Onshape, how we're approaching things the way we're approaching them, And then each of these aspects, if we go and say to our part studios and we go into Sketch Basics, it walks you through where certain things are located in the user interface, walks you through basic examples and workflows to really go and get started. If I were to say create a brand new Onshape document right now, and just take a look at this, we're going to see that if I come into any of the features, so let's open up the Lost feature here. Oops, my interface is in the way for the webinar. We're going to notice inside of this Lost feature, there is going to be a question mark icon attached to it. So you're going to see this across the board. Simply clicking on that little icon in the bottom right will send me right to the index page for the Lost feature so I can walk through how it's done, how to loft and create a surface versus a solid, and the steps required to do so. So it's a really nice space to say, okay, I'm not sure, I'm familiar with, say, the lost feature in other systems. Let's take a look at how Onshape handles things. So you can just open up that feature, click on the help index instead of having to go search through it manually. It'll send you right to that instance. I think another important thing for new users to our environment is to really understand how we handle performance and how things are done within Onshape as well, right? We do a lot of the modeling is handled on Amazon Web Services. So the Parasolid kernel, the actual engine that does the CAD math, is handled off of your machine, but then your computer hardware is still utilized to visually represent the graphics in our environment. So each computer is going to be different. We do support a broad range of platforms: Linux, iOS, Mac OS, Windows. So there's a lot of combinations of hardware, software that we need to be able to support. The environment, the interface will always be the same because it's through a browser, but those interactions can be impacted by various things. The biggest one people mistake us for is really, your internet bandwidth. We're not streaming data like I'm currently streaming my screen to your guys' computer screens. So it's not like a Netflix system where it's eating up a lot of bandwidth, but that can be a factor. Really, it's mainly is your computer hardware utilizing all its power for the browser application. Typically, computers tend to say the browser, isn't as important in its priority list, but we can always check that. We actually have a built-in systems check in Onshape. That's, again, under the question mark icon. This allows us to say, hey, is your browser compatible with Onshape? Are you able to run WebGL, which is what we take advantage of from a browser tool to actually visualize the graphics? And then is Onshape seeing the actual graphics card that you have? If you don't see that here, then that means it's not being fully utilized within the browser itself. So we do have a nice link here to help you get that set up as well. And we also give you a nice real-time performance check. So I'm running at about 30 million triangles per second. That's what my current Mac setup can handle. I've seen computers range from 15 to 300 million, 300 being the higher end CAD workstations, like the one at my desk. So anywhere between there, as long as you're to the far right green, prospectively, you're going to be working great in Onshape for pretty hefty assemblies, 1,500 parts up for something like what I have here. Now, the last bit of our help inside the help menu is really just getting access to all these resources. So beyond just seeing these compatibility checks, is asking for feedback, there's other applications and links here as well. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but the two I do want to call out quickly are our feature script documentation. So for those interested in creating custom features within Onshape, this will send you right to that web environment that walks you through kind of learning feature script, going through our standard features and really the documentation required to get off the ground and get your own CAD feature inside of Onshape. I think the really important one that you should always reference is the what's new. Every time you push an update, you'll see a little pop-up on your screen the next time you log on. But if you ever want to go back to that page, we do have a direct what's new link that actually sends us to that specific webinar, or I'm sorry, forum discussion. So right now I'm just in the most recent comments for the latest update. We always provide little videos, little snippets going into detail about the new features and what's going on. And then of course we're now also inside of our forum environment, which is very active. A lot of our employees are always on here. We always like to keep this unanswered number on the bottom right here on my list very, very low. So if you ever have any questions or want to participate, always come in here and ask questions. A lot of times it's already been asked. So what we ask before you post in the form is just do a quick search. Don't have to do too in-depth, just to make sure that no one's already asked it and it's already been answered. Typically, we'll just throw a link to that forum post if that's the case. Now, the biggest change, if you haven't seen Onshape in a while, you know, a year, a few months, we have been adding and improving upon this new learning center of ours. We have had it for a while, but we always add updates just as we do to Onshape. And we did make a pretty big change to it recently, so I wanted to cover a few things here. And that's part of the Learning Center. I'm just reading, someone came up with a quick question. Let's take a shot at this really quick. I have to use a lot of step files that come from customers and vendors. Sometimes they have as many as 5,500 faces. Is there anything that will help my machine handle these? Sometimes it takes several seconds and minutes for commands to complete with these files. We do have some good workflows for handling imported data, especially if it has a lot of faces, a lot of components to it. And I'll actually reference some of those here now. But I'd love to talk to you offhand outside of the webinar, just to give you some more in-depth use case specific information here. When it comes to handling, you know, larger pieces of imported data, we do have some nice tricks here. I always love using our secondary view cube to turn on shaded without edges. Again, that'll just hide all the dark edges on your model. That'll help make it less graphically intensive for your machine. So it can rotate and the features can process a little bit more quickly. But we also actually have some direct technical briefings in our Learning Center. So let's touch on the Learning Center as well. This is, I think, is the big focus of the webinar today. So clicking on, we actually have several links to the Learning Center just through the question mark icon. We did add this big button to the Onshape interface. It has single sign-on, so your Onshape login. We'll also log you into the Learning Center here. And this is the new environment. We've decided to reorganize this a little bit to make it a lot easier to run through workflows and get started and to see what's new. So I wanted to take a second just to walk through the environment here. So first and foremost, the biggest focus for Onshape is our instructor-led training courses. These are run by true instructors, webinar style like this, that are recorded. Our biggest and most popular one is the Onshape Bootcamp. It runs for 4 days, 2 hours a day. So that's about an 8-hour total to get your feet wet inside of Onshape. But then we have some more niche learning instructor-led trainings for top-down design, since we do work with a part studio and have an interesting multi-part design approach. That top-down design model is very powerful in our system, so we have a specific 2-day course on that. And then we also have one towards simultaneous sheet metal. Because we allow you to see the bent and flat pattern at the same time, this is a little bit different from what people are used to in other CAD systems, and we do have a lot of sheet metal customers out there, so we wanted a very specific course for that growing number of people. Now, to complement the instructor-led training courses is our self-paced courses. We've now added a few self-paced courses along the lines for configurations, which is a big change in Onshape compared to the likes of, say, SolidWorks. But we've also added specific learning pathways to kind of follow along and cover whether you're getting started in the system, wanting to focus on the data management side of Onshape, or more advanced topics like the configuration workflow. And to complement both of these, what we usually recommend is you take the instructor-led training and also then on your own follow along with the learning pathways. They typically have a lot of similar examples and all the same topics are covered. But for me personally, I have about, what is it now, 5,000 hours of using Onshape at least. And when I do the Q&A and review of our learning pathways, there's still little bits of detail that I've never known that I catch up on. So the learning pathways, the self-paced ones, have good nuggets of information that you might not just remember from instructor-led or no one's ever just brought up because you know, there are good pieces depending on what kind of use case and environment you're in. Now, the third thing that a lot of people don't ever see, but is still very, very useful, are these technical briefings. There are versions of, you know, nicely dressed white papers that are very digestible for professional companies to have very specific workflows and focuses. So, you know, these can be niche use cases that people might have questions on, or just to go more in depth for things that our training material and our videos might not cover. You'll also see webinars start to get into details around these, but some very big ones that I've always ended up forwarding to people are things like best practices for managing custom libraries. We do have a custom, you know, or we do have a standard content toolbox in our assemblies, but in case you have your own supplier provided parts that you still want a library for, this walks you through how to create one in Onshape, and it covers the best practices for doing so. So all these technical briefings will cover what we view as the best practices for you to be following with our environment, how we're handling sharing, collaboration, permissions, things along those lines. Since we did just introduce release management, and we do have this unique approach to not being file-based, always everyone brings up, how should I organize my company? How should I organize my, you know, CAD database? Or even, you know, handle bringing in a large import. So we do have a lot of technical briefings covering those. The big ones will be under data management, things like product structure organization. This is actually added to my email signature for most use cases, because I always want all of my customers to be looking at this first, and then we'll meet to go over how they should have their you know, environment organized based on their industry and use case. And everything here, like these technical briefings, these will just open up. So let's actually click into this. This will show you just a nice little blog post style page with images, text. And typically, if you just got to this and you haven't done it yet, it'll look like a course. So let me find one that I haven't actually done yet. So advanced meeting techniques. It'll say start course. So it's just to track if you've read it or not. From a you know, company admin or manager perspective, you can actually see if an Onshape, you know, new Onshape hire, new Onshape user has actually gone through and looked at this. You know, again, maybe you're into, you know, he does the top level assemblies, is doing the meeting, you send him this link, you can just make sure, hey, take a look at this. I can see that you've completed it, good. Now let's go to the next step, next stages. So it's a good way just to track yourself or other people in your company to make sure that, you know, they're getting the required learning done for an Onshape environment. Now, when we go back to the home page, let me go back to my dashboard. There are a few different views we can have. So clicking on my dashboard after you're inside of a course or a technical briefing will let you know your progress of things. So right now we can see I'm inside of a lot of self-paced courses that I'm currently in the middle of, and I can always navigate to specific points in time and get a few stats. You know, how long I'm spending each day on this, how much percentage complete I've done. But before we get into too much detail on the actual dashboard, let's go back to the main Learning Center page here and actually look at one of these learning pathways. So within Onshape and the Learning Center homepage, we've got some nice organized stages for the instructor-led training, the self-paced courses, and the technical briefings. So if I scroll down, these are what I'm going to be sent to just clicking on those top-level views. Since we do push updates every 3 weeks, we do always update all of this information a lot. So under the featured section, these are basically the most recently modified pieces of our training content. So if we make updates, say Enterprise, which was a big one recently, or that advanced configuration course we just added, you'll see that at the top here is featured, just letting you know there's been some changes to these ones, or these are newly added, just to draw your attention to them. And then so the instructor-led training, if you come talk to your customer success manager or come talk to us on the customer success side, we can help get you set up with the training. Again, we have advanced, we have starting out with the boot camp, just getting started in Onshape, then some, you know, more specific sheet metal and top-down training, all instructor-led. And now we've also introduced these learning pathways. So this includes multiple learning self-paced courses into these pathways that we have that actually have certificates of completion at the end. So, you know, the very starting one, the fundamentals of CAD, That's the one that our boot camp really goes through. It does start to tie in some of the data management as well. But if we look at one of these pathways, it's going to give me basically a catalog of what courses within our self-paced environment I should be taking. You don't have to take these in order. This is not a linear workflow. So if you want to skip around and just focus on, our multi-part part studios, you can jump right into that one self-paced course, and you don't even have to go through this in order. But I do want to show up a few topics of our self-paced courses. They include a mixture of videos that'll walk you through certain concepts, certain aspects of this. So this is just getting started in what multi-part part studios can be used for. And then we also include a series of exercises. So we actually send you to a public document in Onshape. We tell you to go and test something out. And then we make sure that you followed along properly by doing a quick check here. So if I skip to the end, we can actually do a quick test to see if I got the right answer to make sure that I'm following along appropriately. Built into all of this, again, just like Onshape itself, is support to ask questions at specific points in time. If you're stuck on a slide in the exercise or a point in time in a video, just open up the support, start to fill it out, and ask a question. We do stamp where you are in the course, so we can get a good sense of where you're at, what type of question you have to help focus on that. Take a quick pause to just see if there's any questions, anyone wants to type anything in there. Really, the big thing I want to get across with these self-paced courses, they're not linear. Even within the course itself, you can skip around. So on the left side here, I get this nice course outline as we're going along for me to jump around. If I just have something very specific I want to dig into. When we go through the self-paced training, it's always recommended to have 2 monitors open, one to have Onshape open and one to have this open in. Of course, you can kind of minimize the windows, but it can be tough to see some details in those videos as well. So with this learning pathway, again, I can just get a quick sense of where I'm at with my individual self-paced courses, and then I can see where I'm at with the learning pathway. So the fundamentals of CAD here is what I just started. If I open this up, I can see my progress. If I've completed it or not, it would actually say at this top right blue button. And if you go to the very bottom here, I can see I actually haven't completed any of these courses fully, so I can't quite get the certificate of completion just yet to prove that I've done so. So we currently have 3 of these. Again, these are just certificates. These aren't like professional accolades like other CAD systems, but we do plan on having those. And so you can get a good sense of where you're at right now. We do also have little form badges for completing these as well. So you can always get a good sense of if someone's answering a question, if they've gone through this on that side of things. But we go back to the main page. I do want to show off the, oops, just go to learn. I do want to show off the new configuration pathway. This will be very new for a lot of people as it's just been added. So there are 2 main courses to this. There's the introduction to part configurations and then the advanced part configurations. Again, very similar. It's just 2 courses in this use case because it's a very specific aspect to Onshape. But we do start to drill into the nitty-gritty details of how it works. We like to cover a lot of specific use cases of where you can use configurations and configure the part properties to change colors so that at a quick glance you can tell the sizing of something or what specific configuration you're on for, say, a pneumatic cylinder like this example is. We also go into details in the advanced configurations course for things like how to configure multi-part part studios. A lot of people come in and look for things like assembly configs, which we are working on but don't quite have out today. But there's still a lot of those assembly config use cases that can be handled with Part Studio configuration. So I think we do a good job of covering those here. Things like maybe you have a fixture block for a piece you're machining and have some certain placements of the mounting holes. A Part Studio configuration might actually solve that for you. Again, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us or even use that feedback. If you ever have questions around how to do something or if you think a feature is missing, we can take a look at what's going on, even join you inside that document to help out. Now, I think the biggest thing of this webinar that I did want to do today is help actually prescribe certain aspects of things that you should be looking at based on what you're doing. So as a follow-up to this webinar, feel free to email us back with what industry you're currently in, what kind of models you're pursuing, what you want to get out of Onshape, and I'll be happy to send back a listing of links to each specific thing that I think would be very important for you. Yeah, I need to improve navigation in the Learning Center. You're absolutely right. The one thing that I don't like about it is the home page button. There's no way to easily return back to this. It looks like the Onshape logo can be very useful for that, but I have gotten stuck in the dashboard a few times where I couldn't get out of it. And I'm only using the browser back button as well because I do have several Onshape accounts as being a person that does demos and webinars, so I don't want to accidentally log into a previous cached history of those. So I'm just trying to be very careful that I don't log into any other user account that I have here. But the navigation has been improved actually over where it used to be. So don't be afraid to just click on that Onshape logo on the top left to send you back to the home page. I've just been using the browser back to make sure I'm not, showing anything I'm not supposed to with my login credentials. So for most people getting started in Onshape, again, I do want to prescribe just a few things for those of you that are just coming into the environment. Maybe you're evaluating Onshape for company use or just interested in what we have to offer. I would start out by going to the help index and really looking at the getting started and things to know. This really, helps get through what our philosophy is, what these part studios are, that instead of part files, and really how we're addressing just the typical CAD modeling environment. Then if you want some, more information, more help on navigating the Onshape environment, I definitely recommend looking at the self-paced courses, just the fundamentals. The very first 2 videos will do a lot to help get you started. This is about the first half of day 1 for our bootcamp training. Really getting a handle on that Onshape environment is very important, especially when we have a very streamlined environment, right? We only have one toolbar layer. We're not having, 5 different layers to our toolbar. So what does it mean to open up an extrude and see an extrude solid remove? What does that mean for us? How does that translate over to what I'm used to in, say, a SolidWorks-like environment? So definitely look at the help index first, then come to the Learning Center, go through that fundamentals pathway again. You can skip around if you think you've got a handle on things, but always feel free to circle back around to something you want to just touch up on. I always come through these about every quarter, every 6 months, just to make sure, I'm not missing anything, to make sure I have 100% completion on my actual Onshape account, so that I know I have all those nitty-gritty little details covered from people who come to me and ask for help. And then I think the last thing I'd encourage all of you to go into, besides the help index, besides that starting self-paced course, is our technical briefings. Again, you'll probably see this on my email signature, but going through that product structure organization will be a very, very big one. This just goes through the philosophy of how many parts should I have in one part studio? Should I have my entire project designed in one Onshape document? We kind of walk through the thought process on what you should be doing so that you're following best practices and having the best experience with our system. But Dave, I'll be reaching out to you after this, more specifically for the step file imports. In terms of bringing in and importing CAD data, we do have a technical briefing on that somewhere. I'll search for it and send it to you. I'm just being a little lazy and not digging in too much here, but that's about it for me. What I wanted to cover, I just wanted to show off the new interface on the learning environment. We've started to create these 3 main sections of instructor-led, self-paced, and then these technical briefings. So you can easily jump into one and start to drill down from there. Of course, there's always this search box available. So if you have any topics specifically you want to cover, you just type in the search box here, and you can get a result for all 3 of those main groupings. Now, there still is a lot outside of this, but don't ever hesitate to reach out to us Onshape employees personally. because we can always help navigate the rest of our environment. If you just go to onshape.com, of course, we do have this video library with all these webinar videos. We tend to cover very niche topics here, like advanced surfacing techniques, navigating Onshape for SolidWorks and PTC users. Philip Thomas just did a big one the other week about Onshape assemblies for SolidWorks users. So we tend to do webinars based on topics we see come up a lot. I thought today a nice shorter one, just where to find access to all these resources and what to do would come into play. But my action item for all of you that I'm going to leave you with, email back to our follow-up email to you guys of this webinar with just what industry you're in, what you're trying to get out of Onshape, and I'll help prescribe to you a few of these links for where you should go, where you should start to just help learn the environment and be on the right course to have success here. Because my main focus is just always making sure there's a good experience and you're getting your job done here, because, that's end all be all at the end of the day is what we want to help you do. With that said, if there's no other questions, I will leave you to it, to have a nice rest of your day and enjoy a nice summer day here, at least in the States. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.